At this stage of the meeting, I usually give a listing of the our state society officers and other chapter officers that we invite to the meeting. Among them is Jim Rosnadick, our president of the state society, Buddy Witherspoon, who's vice president of the mid-region, Dave Demarius, who's the chair at the State Society of Operations and Technology. From Thomas Taylor chapter, which is our brother chapter, we have Jim Hain, president, Chip Griffin, vice president, Bill Jones, secretary, Bucky Haas, register. And from Battle of Utah Springs, we always invite Doug Doster, who's the secretary down there. The reason we invite all these gentlemen to our chapter is because that all three of these chapters are very much interested in technology development, which is one of our priorities in our chapter right now. So we like to stay in contact with everybody, and that's the reason we invite them, so that we can share ideas between the three chapters in our region. Now, these gentlemen may not all be able to attend our meetings every meeting, but occasionally they do have some time in their schedule. They'll come and visit with us, and we appreciate that very much. At this point in the meeting, we usually do our national, state, and SAR pledges. And our two co-commanders of our color guard are David Wayne Earhart and Gary Earhart. Neither one of them are able to be here. As a matter of fact, Wayne went through the COVID scenario a month or so back, and probably he's still in recuperation from that. So instead of the Earharts doing our pledges, we have Robert Eskew, who is our chapter genealogist, and Robert has volunteered to lead us through the pledges. Robert, can you hear me?
Can anybody? Fine.
You can hear me. Okay, good. Would you go ahead with the pledges, please?
All right. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Robert, South Carolina pledge.
I salute the flag of South Carolina and pledge to the Palmetto State love, loyalty, and faith.
SAR pledge.
We, descendants of the heroes of the American Revolution, who, by their sacrifices, established the United States of America, reaffirm our faith in the principles of liberty and our constitutional republic, and solemnly pledge ourselves to defend them against every foe.
Thank you, Robert. Our chaplain is Hugh Ham, and Hugh also is not with us tonight. So I have a little prayer for Thanksgiving, which is approaching rapidly, and I'll go through that prayer with you for our meeting. It's a Thanksgiving prayer by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it goes as follows. For each new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love and friends, for everything thy godness sends, for flowers that bloom about our feet, for tender grass so fresh, so sweet, for song of bird and hum of bee, for all things fair we hear or see. Our Father in heaven, we thank thee for this. Now I'll turn it over to Gary Blanput, who is our chapter secretary, and Gary will give us a report on our minutes. Gary?
Yes, so the minutes were posted and were sent out with the newsletter on November 1st and were approved by a vote of the members who voted after they read the minutes. And I just wanted the one correction we should notice that the iPhone, we now know that iPhone is Miriam Lovett, and she's on again tonight.
Thank you, Gary. Just for your edification, we had 16 members that voted on our online voting system in our newsletter, and all 16 approved the minutes. The minutes are available on the newsletter, and are also available on the website within the newsletter. Our treasurer is Fritz Gladfelter, and Fritz is in recuperation from having some surgery on his head. And he's also having a little difficulty getting computer connected to us. So we're working with him on that. So I will give the treasurer's report. Our opening balance for the month was $1,025.74. We had no expenses for this month, so our closing balance is the same. Our next speaker is our registrar, Woody Carruthers. Woody, are you there?
I'm here. I would like to introduce a guest that we have with us tonight, Mike Gillis, if you would wave your hand there. Yeah, Mike is our newest applicant. I processed his paperwork today, and he had a very interesting application. It's probably one of the more complex applications that I've worked with. It's about 50 pages long as far as the proof documentation, but I think it's solid. Don't think we'll have any problem with his application going through the process. Mike's wife is the sister of a scout that I had back in the 1970s when I was a scoutmaster. So it's a small world that we live in. But we're glad to have Mike with us tonight, and glad to have him as probably our next member. Glad to have you, Mike. Going on to the report, as of this last quarter, we had with Mike's, we had 3 applications that have been submitted to the state registrar, and they all look like good solid applications. So we got 3 that are in process, and I also have and those 3 were David Grable and Gary Patterson and Mike Gillis. I've got 3 more that I'm working on. One is Norman Smith. He lives down below Orangeburg. And Norman, the only thing we need to have a complete application for him is his birth certificate. Once he gets that for us, I can submit his application. We got another applicant, John Wright, that I'm working with. And we've pretty well established his lineage. He's got a good solid lineage. I think we have come up with good proof documentation to submit an application for him. I talked to him today, and he's solid. Don't think we have any problem with him. And I talked to another applicant Sunday. His name is Austin Dickinson, and he and his wife moved here from Oregon. I think he was probably in the military, but I'm just making initial contact with Austin. So there we have 3 that are in process and 3 that are on the verge of being sent to the state registrar. I'm also working with Bearley Crosby. I'm having some trouble with his. We got one generation where we really can't come up with proof for one of his generations. So we might have to look for an alternate branch to work on his. Don has mentioned one other person that we'd like to get into the process. His name is Michael Burgess. He's a teacher at Ridgeview High School, and I need to get with Don and see if we can maybe get him in. I've tried to make several contacts with him, but I can't make contact. So Don, I might need to get you to maybe do the footwork on it and let me work in the background and, you know, helping to get the application and everything ready if he wants to proceed with the application. Of course, he might just be really tied up with school right now and might want to put it off to later. But Michael Burgess, from what I've heard of him from students I know over there, he would be a nice member to have in the chapter.
Sure would.
I think that pretty well brings us up to date. There's a possibility that we might increase our membership by about 20% before the end of the year. So
That'd be tremendous, Woody.
the registrations are going good. We got some good people that might be joining us.
Thank you very much for that report. It's good to hear. Our genealogist is Robert Eskew. Robert, are you there?
Yeah, I have nothing to report.
Okay, well, anyhow, I want to thank you for taking care of the pledges and also the recessional at the end of the meeting. Thank you kindly for that.
All right.
At this stage of the meeting, I'll give our chapter report. This month is, there were no events, but we did have a lot of activity within the chapter on the administrative side of it and some of the interactions with the state society. One of the things that the executive committee has approved for us to proceed with is expanding our database that's on the website. We have a SQL database out there with some very basic information about each active compatriot, dues paying compatriot within the chapter. But we would like to, for example, we've got name, address, and telephone number and email address and wife's name in most cases. But we don't have much information beyond that. And there's a lot of good information about our compatriots that we should and would like to record within our database for the future. And Gary Blanpett, our secretary, and myself will be working on this project in the coming months. The next comment from the month is our newsletter, and we hit a record of 85 subscribers that opened the newsletter this month. And we also had the one man, Noel Collins, that I mentioned from last week. He is going to contribute an article. He's a professor in constitutional law at South Carolina. And he's going to contribute a article to our newsletter on constitutional law and the revolution. And I'll have that in our next newsletter for December. Our Christmas luncheon, Fritz Gladfelter, our treasurer, is taking care of the administration of that and the collection of the monies for the luncheon. It's still scheduled for December the 5th. We have 5 attendees from our chapter attending so far. And today is our cutoff. So I'll be working with Fritz tomorrow to get a final tally on how many are going to the luncheon and get our check over to Granby chapter. Some really good news. Wendell Patton, our compatriot that was approved back in April, we actually have the certification within the state of South Carolina now, and that's with our mid-region vice president, Buddy Witherspoon. And Buddy is coordinating with the state to get the proper signatures on that so we can go ahead and induct Wendell into our chapter. And it's going to be a good induction because Wendell is a former professional photographer. So that'll be an added capability to our chapter in the coming months and years, which is really nice. As of this meeting, every member should have their dues notices for 2020. However, under number 6, we do have an error in our chapter dues. Former President Don Simmons had negotiated a $25 chapter dues amount, and we were using that to pay for our presenters' fees at our meetings. somewhere along the line, we inadvertently reverted back to the original $20. And I sent a letter to the State Society and indicating that the error was within our chapter. However, I don't think it's going to be financially impact us for the present because we haven't had much demand or need for live presenters because of the technology development we've had within the chapter. Most of the entertainment, if you want to put that in quotes, has been internally within the technology of our chapter and not so much for live presenters. We do want to get back to an environment where we have both, but I don't think we've had a lot of financial impact. And I also sent a letter to the State Society reaffirming that we definitely do want to go back to $25 next year as our chapter dues, which would help cover expenses with the presenters. On the 14th of October, a number of our officers in our chapter, and as a matter of fact, I think probably we had more officers at that chapter meeting than any other chapter. But it was on the 14th of the month and it went quite well. It was good to see because it's a step forward for the State Society and for us in general as a group within the state, because we all can learn from each other. So that was a big step forward. We also, number 8, Keith has now developed our videos coming off of our meetings, and he actually creates the videos through Zoom and puts them onto the Zoom cloud. And then we put them out to YouTube. And Keith has been successful on putting our October meeting video on YouTube now. So that puts the impetus on me to get the page created in the website. So anybody that would like to go out, you know, an archival or look at a previous meeting video, they will be able to in the future as soon as we get that onto the website. So that's the ball is in my court now to build that page and get those videos out there. So that's it pretty much for the month. It's really not been a real active month for us other than administrative issues like we've just gone through. I do want to go back to something we presented in the prior chapter and kind of bring you an update on where we're at. Our strategic objective for this chapter right now is to eventually, as quickly as we can, get back to a virtual brick and mortar chapter. And that's what that is basically a combination of a Zoom and live meeting combination. In order to do that, they're kind of sub-projects or objectives that we have in mind. We call them future things, but 2 of them now are pretty much proven. One is direct Zoom meetings, which we proved in our last meeting. We can do that. The other is the hybrid Zoom meeting. We've already proved that we can do hybrid Zoom meetings, but we haven't proven it in a brick and mortar scenario. So I'm leaving that objective open right now, even though it's 90% proven within the chapter. As soon as we get to a brick and mortar scenario, and we prove that we can actually run it hybrid, that's when it's going to be good. The other part of that objective that's still outstanding in my mind is that the hybrid scenario that we developed for our September or August meeting, whatever you want to call it, it had a number of links in it that are weak links in the chain. Any one of those links break and we could not conduct the meeting. So what I'm trying to do is to reduce some of those links in the hybrid environment. And I've talked to Keith about it, and right now I've got an idea that I want to test out, and if I can, it'll probably take 2 of the links out of the 5 that we have in the hybrid meeting scenario. So that's the reason we're leaving that one open at the moment. On the other one, another one that is open is the video editing archiving, and basically that's open because Keith is going through the learning curve of developing techniques and et cetera within that objective. And but in our first October video that he created and he put out on YouTube, I thought he did a phenomenal job on that. So I'm not quite sure what other things he can do, but he's talking about some nice front end and rear end video improvements. And I think he picked up some ideas probably from Dave Demarius, who's our state coordinator for operations and technology from the event that they had up there. So we're already kind of sharing within the chapters, which is really great. This is the whole objective of this technology movement through Dave. The final one is the linking of our website to Zoom. And that one's in my ball court. And to be honest with you, I haven't had a lot of time to spend with that. It's not going to take a lot of effort, but you need to probably 2 or 3 days to really work with that and test it out and make sure it works well. But basically the concept is kind of a backup for connection of our Patriots to Zoom. And if I can get the software to work, basically they'll go into our website, go to a page, sign in, and then just press a button. And it's supposed to be, according to the software, a generic entry into Zoom for us. So there's a learning curve on that's in my court, and I'm going to be working on it as quickly as I can. So that kind of updates you on our overall strategic objective within the chapter, and also the future sub-objectives that Keith and I and Woody and a few others are working on. With that, now I'd like to move on to our Honors and Awards Committee Chairman, Don Simmons. And Don, do you have any updates? Would you have any words? Is Don there? Hello?
Don is muted.
All right, now I got it.
Is Don there?
Talking before I unmuted.
Okay.
I jumped the gun. I don't have anything to report, and I appreciate your work.
Oh, Don, I thank you for everything you've done for our chapter. And if it weren't for you, there wouldn't be a chapter today. So thank you, sir. At this point, we usually take a short break, and we, in a live meeting, we would either probably go to a live presenter or to some videos or films that we wanted to show. Because we're in a Zoom environment, it's a little bit restrictive and constrained. And so what I've tried to do is last week I was doing a little reading, and I came across the term called regulators. And I thought, regulators, it sounds like maybe a sheriff or somebody that kind of controls things. So I went out and I found a video on it, and I thought maybe you'd be interested. If some of us, like myself, are not really knowledgeable in the American Revolution, we're more Civil War people, but it's very interesting about the regulators. And I thought maybe you all might be interested in viewing a short 13-minute video on that. And then there's a little like 7-minute one on loyalists. And I thought when I saw that it was a kind of a nice definition of what a loyalist was, because when I always thought of them, I always thought of them of a group of people that were fully committed to what they were. And it turns out that that's not the case. But anyhow, at this stage, what we're going to do is do a couple of these short videos for you, and then we'll come back into our normal meeting. The first one is on the regulators.
Hello, and welcome back to Understanding the American Revolution. This is video number 13. This is on the regulators, and this is a really interesting topic. I decided to do this one live so that I don't have to go back and edit later, because I got a pretty busy day today. But I did want to get this on the old YouTubes and continue the series. So the regulators, now this is actually really interesting stuff. This is a really long story, so we can only really scratch the surface of what's going on here. So we've gotten through the Stamp Act, Führer, and all of that kind of build up to the revolution, Sons of Liberty, and stuff like that. We're now actually getting to what some people call the first real battle of the American Revolution. So that's what's happening here. So finally, some shooting gets started here. So this occurs, the regulators, or the War of the Regulators, as it's sometimes called, happened in North Carolina and South Carolina colonies between 1765 and 1771, basically same period as the Stamp Act and the aftermath that we were talking about in the last couple videos. So this event is linked to population pressures. The colonies at this point in time are really bursting at the seams. There's huge population growth everywhere, especially in the cities. And interestingly enough, there are historians who talk about sort of understudied aspect of the American Revolution, which is a demographic cause of the revolution, that the population was just getting too big for England to be able to administer the colonies effectively. So we've got lots and lots of people that are being born and moving and all that kind of stuff. And land was getting scarce, which is particularly why that proclamation line we had in 1763 was such a problem. That said that people couldn't move west. Well, people were moving west, particularly in the Carolinas. So lots of settlers were moving west in North and South Carolina, especially after the 7 Years' War, French and Indian War. And they're looking for new farmland because the land is kind of tapped out in the eastern portions. And they're bringing slaves and plantation slavery to these parts of the colonies. So rich people, planters and merchants particularly, quickly assumed control of the courts and government from and political offices in these areas. Hello, V. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. So what we have is we have these rich people that are taking control of the government, and particularly lawyers. Lawyers are like a big part of this story. Lawyers are educated people. They were educated back east, and then when they move into these places in North and South Carolina, the men of property, the planters and merchants, kind of use the lawyers as sort of their way of taking power. So poor farmers can't afford access to lawyers, and so what happens is the rich people gradually gain control of not only the courts, but also land. So, and officials that they, and of course, because there were in these colonies, in order to vote, you had to own property. So the government quickly became a tool of these property owners. And particularly in North Carolina, the officials got very, very greedy. So what they would do is they would raise taxes on local residents, and naturally they didn't enforce taxes or didn't tend to enforce taxes against themselves, but they would raise taxes on the poor farmers in the area and then use that money to fund their campaigns of lawyering in order to gain control of land. Sometimes they even tore up prior tax records and then went out demanding that people pay back taxes. And they're like, we don't have any record of your taxes for the last 5 years, neglecting to say that, yeah, well, we tore that up precisely so we could come harass you for back taxes. So this is getting to be a really problematic situation. So then the last straw. There's a new royal governor of North Carolina named William Tryon, and he's appointed in 1765. And he fleeces the locals in order to build a big mansion for the governor to live in. Actually, the mansion still exists, believe it or not. So bands of lower class citizens start forming, and they start going around demanding reform of land, of courts and the taxation system. So it's not no taxation without representation, but they want fair taxation. And now these are their local governments that they're protesting against, not the crown, but the local governments. So these groups are very loosely organized. They're not under a unified command. In fact, the quote unquote leaders of the regulators had very little control over what these people did. So there were some lawless rabble among them, and there are lots of reports of heavy drinking, and they go around smashing things and that kind of stuff. Yes, anarchy. So then there's a clash in 1768 where a group of regulators attacks a courthouse in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And they kind of went a little nuts. So they start dragging lawyers through the streets. Being a lawyer in this part of the country is a real bad career move if you don't want to get dragged through the streets. So they go around grabbing lawyers, dragging them, beating the crap out of them, and actually they smear crap, and I mean like literal human crap, all over the courthouse. They apparently dug up a body of a slave and like threw it in one of the courtrooms, like really disgusting stuff. And then they start to get drunk. They went and attacked the house of a local prominent lawyer. They, busted open his cellar, drank all his booze, and eventually they burned the place down. So this is kind of how the regulators are getting on with things. So you see, there's definitely a class warfare aspect to this. So this kind of violence, I mean, this courthouse incident is one of the most prominent, but this kind of violence continues off and on for about 5 years. And in South Carolina, so this is happening in North Carolina. South Carolina, there's also a regulator movement, but it's very different. And the South Carolina regulators were mostly elites. They were mostly richer farmers and particularly slave owners, protecting their property from bandits, from Indians, etc. But also, and this is important for the revolution, they're also setting up local courts and government provided services because the British Parliament was very slow to get stuff going in this era. So the distance and the administrative problems of really making the colonies work are part of the impetus for this, at least in South Carolina. So that's what I'm going to say about South Carolina. So let's go back to North Carolina, which is the big scene. So as I said, there's scattered clashes going on for about 5 years in the late 1760s, early 1770s. And then finally, there's an actual battle that occurs in May of 1771. And people say this is the first real battle of the American Revolution, if you count the regulator uprising as part of the American Revolution. As we'll see, there's some question about that. So what happens? Governor Tryon, he's the guy that built that big house. He finally decides he's going to stamp out this rebellion once and for all. So he raises 1,000 colonial militia. But about 2,000 of the regulators show up, and the regulators are very, very popular in the countryside.
All right. Is Nelson, Michael?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Ken?
Okay, good deal. Just an update to the membership. I discussed this with the executive committee last week, but I was able to make contact with Pastor Ron Rhodes at the Irmo Worship Center to talk about having an upcoming ceremony to commemorate the SAR service of Furman and Miriam. Is that Younginger? Anyway, he's buried at their sanctuary up in Irmo, and anyway, he said that he would have to talk to the family, and I think he got in touch with Miriam to get her blessings on our project for that. And we'll plan to do that sometime, hopefully early next year when our COVID situation gets a little clearer and we feel more comfortable to gather together.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I also, mentioned that I made contact with Lexington County about the grave of Gabriel Friday, who was a son-in-law, and he was a Revolutionary War captain. He was son-in-law of Godfrey Dreher, that our chapter is named for. He's buried on what appears to be the road right away off of 378 in West Columbia. And anyway, we're trying to see what kind of permission we need to do a future marking for his grave. And that concludes my report.
And Nelson, we've confirmed that he's a SAR or DAR verified patriot.
He's recognized as the SAR, but there are no descendants under the SAR form. But there are, I believe it was 11 or 13 descendants in the DAR from
Very
Captain
good.
Friday.
Very good.
Should be good.
Thank you, Nelson.
You're welcome.
Our historian is Buck Schuler. Is Buck with us tonight, since I can't see any videos?
Yeah, Buck left me a message that he was working tonight and wouldn't be able to join us. So I assume that means he's in the cockpit somewhere.
Yeah, he's probably somewhere over us. Our Vice President of Chapter Development is Fred Morrison, and Fred is going through the same scenario that Fritz Gladfelter, our treasurer, is going through. He had surgery on some lesions on his head, and he's also having a computer issue that we're trying to get resolved for him. I just would like to make a comment about Fred also, that he's, even though he's kind of housebound right now, he's been a tremendous contributor to our newsletter in the way of articles and just good things for the newsletter. And I really appreciate his input and his help. The next gentleman up is our Vice President of Technology, Keith Maddox. Keith.
No, I went through that while you were working on getting back online.
Oh, you did? Okay. Very good. Our chair of our ladies auxiliary is Terry Gladfelter, which is Fritz's wife. And Fritz is not here and neither is Terry, but Terry is, just to comment on Terry, she's one of those shirt sleeve type officers from the DAR. If there's anything going on, she's heavily involved in it, both on in our chapter and in DAR, and a very nice lady. And I very much respect her. I'm looking forward to us getting back to brick and mortar meetings where we can be together again with her. The next gentleman up is our chair of our ROTC Awards group. And he, in addition to that, he's also the State Society Vice President for the Mid-Region. And that's Dr. Buddy Witherspoon. Buddy, are you there?
Yes, Buddy is there.
Is his mic on?
No, I just sent him an unmute request.
Can you hear me now?
Got you, Buddy. Thank you.
Gotcha, buddy.
Good. Yes, sir. As far as the JRTC, I have, as you know, we didn't have schools in session physically. I guess it was virtual classes, so didn't have many presentations from this past spring. However, we did have one that I delivered recently physically to Swansea High School and gave to Major Williams to present to the individual who we were to present it to this year. So that was the only one that would have been presented for 2020. We hope to get back to normal maybe for 2021 in the spring for the JRTC rewards.
Is that it, buddy?
Yes, sir, as far as ROTC.
Okay, do you have any reports from the State Society?
I do. Is President Jim on the line?
No, I don't think Jim joined us tonight.
Okay, I just thought it'd be nice to hear from him, but if he's not on, I'll try to bring you up to date. Number one, the Wendell Patent Certificate has the necessary signatures and is ready for presentation.
And that is a good move. Thank you very much, buddy.
Good. After 4 tries from National, I finally got them to send it to me rather than send it to the normal channels, and I got it expeditiously and got the signatures by this past Saturday. And so it is ready to be presented as such. I understand from the president that he's trying to set up an executive committee meeting shortly because I don't think we've had one lately. And I think most of you all know that there's been a problem with new applications. I think they probably went to the state registrar and from him to the state secretary at the time. And from there, I think they were supposed to be mailed to National, but National has received nothing from us. They tell me since about the spring, April or so, which tells me that they're either lost or what have you. And as I understand at the last BOG meeting we had, that they were going to, the state registrar was going to get a list of who he had and was working on to get ready to send to National so he could get that list to each chapter. And they in turn, therefore, would know ones that were not being submitted and therefore were probably part of the ones that were lost so that they could reconstruct those applications to get them back to the state registrar to be able to get them on to National. As you know, National in general is going to have them 3 months. And some of those applications have been in the process around the state probably 4, 5, 6 months, and that's long overdue. And I asked that they make contact with these applicants and please let them know that because of circumstances, I assume beyond our control, that that we are trying to work through this as quickly as we can to get it resolved and what have you. So having said that, I would also say that I heard from the state registrar last week. He is also chair of the nominating committee. And he asked if I would consider serving another term as vice president of the Midlands. And of course, I wrote him about an 18-page dissertation telling him all the reasons I wasn't sure that was in the best interest of all concerned. But he wrote back and said he agreed with it all, but he thought that probably we needed to move forward. So I told him I was willing if we were able to accomplish anything during this time rather than the rhetoric and the more action and not just talking and whatever, try to get resolution to the problems we'd had, especially with these new applications. As I told him, the new applications are certainly the lifeblood of the organization. Between that and retention is most important. And if we can't keep that going, then we're in pretty bad shape. And Woody, I was glad to hear your report because, to increase our membership in 20% in this year, that would be fantastic, naturally. But having said that, I think that's all that needs to come forth at this moment from National. As you all may have known, the secretary who was elected during the spring, Guy Higgins, resigned totally and fully. And the president appointed Jonathan Reiser? Jonathan Reiser from Mount Pleasant as the secretary. And if you happen to have gotten 2 dues notices, the reason was we haven't been able to get the records physically from the resigned secretary. And so the new secretary didn't know who had been sent a notice or not. So what he did, he just sent a notice to everybody. So if you did get a repetitious dues notice and had already paid, just disregard it because that's the reason it was done and so forth. So the new secretary got out the dues notices, and I hope everybody's received those by now. And it had on there his address, I believe in Mount Pleasant, where you would send your remittances to and what have you. So that, again, is a little problem. The former secretary who resigned lived in Greenville, North Carolina, which is across the state lines. And I understood the state registrar and new secretary were going to drive up there to get the information. I suggested to them they be sure that was in order before they left, because that's a long drive. And for them to go up there and get turned down, that would be rather disappointing. And so I said, you better be sure everything's in order before you go, so you're going to be able to retrieve them and bring them home. Anyhow, that's about as much as I can tell you from the state right now, unless you might have any questions.
None for me.
Let me make one comment.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Woody. What'd you say?
Let me make one comment for clarification.
Okay.
The 3 applications we have from the Godfrey Dreher chapter are accounted for.
Great.
No problem there.
Super.
Also, for anybody that submitted an application after September the 1st, the application fee included next year's dues.
Good. When did we hear that, Woody? Today?
No, that's ongoing, but since we have a new applicant with us tonight, I thought I'd better make that clear, is if the application was submitted after September the 1st, it included dues for 2021.
Good.
Saying that mainly for Mike's benefit. No,
Okay.
don't want to scare you.
Is that it, Woody?
That's it.
Buddy, are you complete?
I think unless there's other questions.
Okay, we'll push on then. Thank you very much, buddy.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Woody, you're the chair of education and scouting. Would you like to give a report?
Right now, we are in contact with the history teacher for the 3rd and 4th grades at Seven Oaks Elementary. And right now, because of the virus and what have you, we don't know whether that program will go forward this year because everything is virtual. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Our commander of militia is Don Jones, and Don is not with us tonight, and there really hasn't been much activity in the militia area. We still have 4 uniformed militia with rifles, and we plan with Miriam's grave marking that we'll have a good turnout of uniformed militia to carry the flags in his honor. Anyhow, I'll move on from there. I'm going to open it up now to anybody in the audience that we have this evening. If you have any questions or comments or anything that you would like to state, there's a blue button hand icon on your control panel. If you'll press that, if you don't see that, if Keith sees you moving your hand, waving your hand, that's the backup method if that doesn't work. Is there anybody that would like to have a question or comment about tonight's meeting? I hear somebody, but I don't know whether it's a question or comment.
Sounds like background.
I think it is. We'll move on then.
Bill, I have this is Nelson McLeod. I have something I'd like to mention very briefly.
Surely, go ahead.
At work today, a gentleman, one of my coworkers, came up to me and said, are you in the Sons of American Revolution? I said, sure am. He said, Godfrey Dreher chapter? I said, sure am. He said, I really enjoy y'all's newsletter. I saw your name in the newsletter. Didn't realize you remember. And this guy happens to be the president of the James Williams chapter in Lawrence.
Really? Wow, that's neat. That's kind of nice to hear. Thanks, Nelson. Kind of makes some of our work together beneficial.
It was definitely unsolicited because I didn't have any idea he was a member.
I'll tell you, we've gotten some nice compliments from people in the community, and it kind of keeps us going, doesn't it? Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to go through our recessional, and Robert Eskew has volunteered to do that for us. Robert, are you there?
Yes, I am. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligations to our forefathers who gave us our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, an independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men.
Thank you very much, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, before we leave this evening, I want to apologize for the issues that we've had during this presentation to you. As we were going through all this stuff, I kind of had some feeling that maybe my computer was the cause of it because I had to put a new graphics card in it over the last couple of days. And I'm wondering if that's causing me some issues with videos, etc. But it did give me one message during all the confrontation that we had there with the internet that I was having internet issues. So I'm not quite sure if it's that or what, but you rest assured that Keith and I'll be working on it, and hopefully we'll minimize those kind of things in the future. But anyhow, we would like you to have a great evening, and good evening to all. And
Bill.
Yes, sir.
Doug Doster, could I make a comment or two?
Sure, Doug. How are you doing? It's good
I'm
to hear.
fine. I didn't know anybody could see my pictures up here. I got a new webcam. Now, can anybody see my picture?
Yes, I see you, Doug.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know I was coming through or not. Okay.
Doug, I don't
Right.
see anybody, but it's nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, well, I got a new webcam. Who's it, Woody? You say you can see me? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
See ya.
yeah, I can see Woody and Robert, and I can see everybody else, David, and
Well, Doug,
And
this is
William,
Keith,
okay.
and you're on fine.
okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to make say I always enjoy y'all's meetings, and your letter newsletter is always a treat to see. And I did want to give everybody a shout out that my internet was hacked about a little over a month ago, and I do have a new email address. It's simple. It's my name in reverse, drdouglas@gmail.com. It's not Hotmail anymore. It used to be toyboydoug@hotmail.com, and now it's drdouglas@gmail.com. But I think I'm getting that out, and I'll be getting it out when I become when I'm officially a historian for the state. I'm getting all the emails out there, and just to bring you up to date, I'm on the nominations committee for new officers coming in, and we had a meeting this Saturday. Ed Richburg is chairman of that committee, and we're going to be asking all the chapters to kind of put the word out there. If we have people who are interested in serving on state positions, to let us know. You've got to have held a state position for at least 1 year to be nominated for a state office. You've got to have at least 1 year or something. But anyway, we're looking at the chapters and coming up a slate. We're just about got a slate of people we're going to approach about taking over some positions, and we'll get that done. But that's coming along well. But anyway, it's good seeing you guys, and I wanted to say thank you to all those who did come to Utah Springs commemoration this year. I really had to fight to get that. I kind of went against our state president and even my chapter president to get that thing together. But the overall comments, especially from these people that came from out of state, as far as Maryland, the guy that was a National Color Guard National Color Guard commander, he was really glad we had it, and we took proper precautions. And I think as long as you take proper precautions, and we're outside. Of course, we didn't have the supper the night before or the church service that morning. We just did the outside reflagging ceremony and took it from there, and it was well attended. And the Godfrey Dreher chapter was well representative. And we got, of course, if you have not seen that video done by Eric Barnes, let me know. I've got to get his email again and get a copy of it. But it was really a great film that he made of that commemoration. But again, thank you. I miss our dinners at Lizard Thicket. That was always a big treat for me. But I'm sure we'll get back there one day. But thank you again.
Doug, thank
Hey,
you.
Bill, Bill,
could-
could I just say one word as well, just real quickly?
Sure.
I know you probably all know, but if you're doing your benediction today, I'd like you to all remember John Satterwhite, who passed away this week, and they're having a memorial service for him on Friday. He was a great friend of ours in the upstate, and I'm sure we will all miss him.
I'm sorry to hear that. I've seen his name. I don't remember meeting him, but I've seen his name often. You say he passed away this week?
Yes,
What chapter was he in?
he was president of the Robert Anderson chapter for.
That's where I saw it. Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there going to be anybody from the state or any compatriots attending the funeral, or?
I don't know. There will be a memorial service on Friday. We probably will have a number of representatives from our chapter. I don't know. Jonathan Kaiser has just sent out a message this evening about it, so I'm not sure what other groups are planning to attend. Again, with Keith, it'd be a lovely thing as well, probably for our organization to stream that too. But obviously, we would want to have the family's input before we even attempt to do anything like that.
And who is this speaking? I'm not seeing any images on my screen at all, and I apologize.
I'm sorry. This is Dave Damaris. I'm from the Andrew Pickens chapter, and
yes.
doing the.
I'm sorry, Dave. I don't see your picture, so I'm kind of at a disadvantage here.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you for the update, David. I appreciate that.
welcome.
Is there anybody else that has any news or anything they want to share with us? Well, gentlemen, again, I apologize for some of the things that happened tonight. We practiced, but our practice wasn't perfect, but we will certainly try to make it perfect in the future. Take care of yourselves. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.